Hello there! Thank you for lending me your eyes and ears as we look into what makes classic illustration so cool. So we kicked this Gibson Girl segment off right by looking into Collier's magazine and learning a little bit about fashion and a little bit about feminism. And in part 2, this section right here, we're going to see what is a new woman and learn a little bit about Charles Dana Gibson. And in part 3, we'll see by the sea of feminist waves if she can get a 21st century makeover. Let's do it!
Let's start with the artist, Charles Dana Gibson. He was born in Roxbury, Massachusetts in 1867 and passed away in 1944. He studied at New York City's Arts Student League for 2 years and had a wildly successful career as an illustrator. He is best remembered for his Gibson Girls, rendered in pen and ink and usually based on his wife and her 4 sisters, who he used as models. Who is this Gibson Girl, though? Was she a feminist? Yes, she was, and no, she wasn't. So, first wave feminism happened a long time ago, and time tends to sift a lot of things out, like the moderates. When I think of wave 1, the people who stick out to me are the trailblazers we learn about in school. Jane Addams, Sojourner Truth, Sarah and Angelina Grimke, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, plus a whole lot of other ladies and a few gentlemen who were absolutely worth Googling and learning more about. Not everyone was on the equality train, though, and the majority of people fell into a middle ground position. A helpful perspective would be to think of a big cultural movement such as this one like politics today. Let me explain. There were vocal advocates who dedicated their lives to their unique versions of feminism with a capital F, like someone who would feel moved to run for office today. There were people who supported them, or would be like canvassers, knocking on doors, protesting, or calling constituents to try and persuade others to think similarly to them and support their candidate. Then there were more casual supporters, people who might put a sign in their yard, wear a hat, get a bumper sticker, or simply vote sans tweeting about it on election day. Then there were people who paid the issue no mind, like citizens who choose not to vote. Cultural change, however, still happens. The record button for history is always on. And whether you participate or not, like whether you voted for, against, or not at all in the last election, Trump is the current president. If a movement has enough momentum, culture changes. Feminism brought about some big shifts that many people actively fought for, but there were also sections of the populace who were against these changes, and an even bigger part that went about their personal business in a changing world without consciously deciding where they stood in regard to larger issues, like feminism. Do you stop and think about whether your personal choices reflect a conservative or liberal agenda on a daily basis? I love the Gibson Girl because, in a way, she represents the moderates that history often looks over. Maybe Our Lady repinning her hat was a middle-class woman who didn't want the right to vote, but loved to learn and decided to attend a college to become a teacher. On one hand, she's anti-suffrage. On the other, she's working in the public sphere in a job that used to be held by a man. She's really just following her interests in a way that slowly gained acceptance. Now the vast majority of teachers in America are women. That choice doesn't feel revolutionary anymore. The motivations and combinations of participation were and are infinite. But the trailblazers and their helpers nudged progress along far enough to establish a culture that created a lot of new opportunities for women, whether they recognized and actively chose them or not. Life is messy, and the records of our lives, history, certainly is too. Dr. Martha Patterson, an English and women's studies scholar, proposes that Gibson Girls walked a fine line within this changing environment. According to her, his works focused on women who are, quote, tall, distant, elegant, and white, with a pert nose, voluminous upswept hair, corseted waist, and large bust. Charles Dana Gibson's pen and ink drawings of the American girl, the Gibson Girl, offered a popular version of the new woman that both sanctioned and undermined women's desires for progressive socio-political change and personal freedom at the turn of the century, end quote. She argues that his depictions shape and reflect social patterns in a way that pushed gender norms forward by portraying women participating in unconventionally physical activities that were new and trendy, like playing golf, riding bicycles, and swimming, but downplayed their newness by being traditionally beautiful and very feminine. His works were a balancing act that appealed to a broad range, and goodness did she ever appeal to a broad range. There were Gibson Girl look-alike contests, songs written about her. Gibson designed a wallpaper full of his ladies' faces for use in gentlemen's clubs. Women changed their hairstyles and postures to be more like the ones he drew. And the actress Camille Clifford made a whole career on the stage by portraying the Gibson Girl type. In 1903, Gibson signed a $100,000 contract with Collier's, agreeing to deliver 100 pictures over the following 4 years. That's $1,000 a picture, which is almost $30,000 a drawing in today's money. That's bananas. Gibson Girls were all over American visual culture through magazines, postcards, calendars, and more at the turn of the century. What about now, though? How does she relate? Does she even go here?